Hi everyone, welcome to today's show. I'm bringing back a regular guest now, Jerry Marzinsky. You guys love him. You've got loads of questions from him always. Firstly, Jerry, thanks for making it on. We nearly didn't make it, but here we are.
That was a close call.
Yeah, yeah. The gremlins in the system. There was interference already trying to stop us from having this conversation, but we did it. We
It looks
synced.
like
Yeah, we synced up. And Jerry, before I kind of give the audience your bio again for everyone to know a little bit more about your background, would you like to just outline what today's show is going to be about? Lynn, who's going to come on, who's a guest who you know, and also just generally a little bit more about the topic itself.
okay. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jerry Marzinsky. I've spent time working in virtually every kind of mental health uh, unit in the United States over the last 40 or so years. And the entire time, uh, I was attracted to studying, seems like spirit threw me in there, studying the voices that schizophrenics hear, that the psychiatric mafia insist are hallucinations. All right. Um, and that's what I believed when I graduated graduate school. I got out of graduate school. I thought they were hallucinations. I went to work at the biggest, if not one of the biggest psychiatric hospitals on the planet. There were 10,000 people there, 10,000 patients when I got there. And I worked with the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. And what we were looking for was the highest functioning of patients in that hospital. So we could teach them a vocational skill and get them out working, right? And it turned out in a lot of cases, the highest functioning were paranoid schizophrenics, except for the voices they were hearing. Okay. And I believed when I first got there that the voices were hallucinations. Um, but that didn't fit with what I was seeing. Okay. So, um, I've watched patients arguing with those voices, carrying on full-blown conversations with them. Okay? And it sounded like one end of a telephone. So you couldn't hear who was talking, but you could hear the patients responding. And they were responding with full sentences, complete thoughts. You know, it wasn't word salad, like I thought. And um, I got suspicious then. And what got me curious was um, I noticed that these voices were interfering with the students. Okay, so just as they were about to graduate, these voices would get them to do something stupid. They'd start arguing in class or fighting in class or skipping class. Um, and I'd ask them why are you doing that? You're about to graduate. You almost had a certificate here and you're sabotaging yourself. And they would say that the voices were getting loud. They were interfering. Uh, so I was wondering, well, what are these things? Because all through graduate school, they taught us these things were hallucinations. You think hallucinations make no sense. They're like just stupid stuff, noises and I thought they were like word cabbage or something like that. So I started asking, I was curious, why aren't any of the other staff wondering about what these voices are telling these patients? Because the ones who were hearing the voices were the ones who were getting in the most trouble. So I was curious about that. None of them were interested. They had bought what was taught in school was that these were hallucinations and that's all there was to it. They didn't question it. You know, I was raised not to trust authority. So I started asking these patients, what are these voices saying? You know, and I found out that they were running patterns. And one of the first patterns I saw was that they were negative. They didn't say anything good. It was all bad stuff. They were derogatory, they were insulting, they were abusive, they were destructive. Um, they might have they might have started out positive, telling the person that they were friendly spirits and that they could do stuff for them. They could let them know stuff that they normally couldn't know. but invariably, once they got the victim's trust, they attacked them. Let me turn on the lamp here, and then would turn their life into pure misery. So I started asking scores of them, what are these voices telling you? And it was always bad stuff. Right? So I was wondering, well, if they're supposed to be hallucinations, which are random, they're all over the place, then why are they running this negative pattern? And what is holding them on this negative pattern? Why aren't they random like regular hallucinations? And I've seen plenty of hallucinations, and they're unpredictable. You know, this negativity was very predictable. Okay. The next thing I saw was that they were anti-religious. Okay. So I remember one patient coming to me and saying, listen, when I pray the 23rd Psalm, these voices go nuts. They get angry. They don't like it. They curse me. Um, they get louder. They torment me more. So I started asking about that, and I started passing out the 23rd Psalm to other patients who were also psychotic and hearing voices, and their report was the same. Okay? The voices got louder, meaner, and more obstinate when they started praying. So then I started asking them, have you ever attended church? And I asked dozens of them. They said, yeah, the voices react to church. The pattern was if they were weak, they would shut up in church. If they were moderate strength, they would get louder and they would block out what the preacher was saying. And if they were very strong, they would actually drive the person out of the church. Okay. So these patterns went on and on and on, and now we got like 23 of them. The third most important was that they create negative emotion. And then once they do that, it's almost like they're trying to bring the patient down to a low vibration. Once they do that, they energetically drain their victims. And I had one patient tell me that he could actually feel his energy leaving when those voices were attacking him. Now, I have no idea how they do that, but that's a pattern. They actually will drain their victims when they get them upset. They get louder after sunset. They get louder when ignored. They foster self-destructive behavior. And there's 23 more patterns that I have on my website at jerrymarzinsky.com. You can go to articles and see them there for yourself. Now the psychiatric mafia said and still insists they're due to a biochemical imbalance of the brain. That was a lie made up by Eli Lilly in the 70s when they came out with Prozac. And then they used it to sell their drugs. Okay? So then the universities picked up on it, and now it's been disproven over and over and over again, and they're still using it. It's a lie. But now they're changing their vernacular a little bit, and they say, oh, it is believed that schizophrenia is caused by a biochemical imbalance of the brain. So, these voices are very real. They carry on meaningful conversations. I've spoken with them. And I learned the most about them in the prison I worked at for 18 years. Because in the psychiatric hospital, when one of the patients that I was questioning his voices, he went and he told one of the psychiatrists that I was asking him about his voices. The next thing I knew, the next morning, I ended up in the psychiatrist's office being told, these are hallucinations. Don't be asking questions about them because what you're doing is reinforcing the hallucination and making the patient worse. That was bullcrap. I knew it at the time, but you can't say anything to psychiatrists. They're arrogant as the day is long. Right? So that happened twice. So psychiatry doesn't even want you asking questions about what these things are. They have no research into them at all. They've not done any studies on the voices, which is odd because they're one of the main symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia. Okay? They drive paranoid schizophrenia. Okay? If you get rid of the voices by any means possible, the paranoid schizophrenia vanishes. It's gone. Right? They don't understand that. They don't understand that these voices are demons. They are entities. They're parasitic entities. Okay? So what I did is I arranged for Lynn Monet to come on. Now, Lynn was she was an RN, and while she was going through school, she did a now one thing interesting about her is she's been able to see spirits ever since she was a little girl, right? And her mother didn't try to talk her out of it. You know, her mother say, "Well, okay, tell me what you see," and she didn't try to discourage her or mock her or say they were bad dreams or anything like that. So she still can do this, right? So when she was about to graduate nursing school, she had to go through an internship. And one of the places she was doing that internship was a psych hospital. So she was able to see these things in the psych hospital. And she can draw pictures of what they look like. She knocked one off of a girl's back. So she was able to see them. Right. So I wanted to get somebody on who was brave enough to talk about this stuff. She's near retirement now, so she doesn't care whether they jump her or not.
Well, first of all, hi, John. Thank you
Hi.
for having me. It's very nice to meet you.
It's
I just had a 62nd birthday yesterday, so I'm still reeling from the weekend of my birthday.
you're
And
62.
so, yes,
Oh my
just turned
goodness me.
62.
Doesn't look it like it.
That's
Thank
supernatural.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Jerry had said that he'd mentioned I've seen things ever since I was little. I mean, really little. I mean, I remember a time when I was 5 years old with my brother where we saw a school mate of his and his best friend enter into my parents' master bedroom. And it turned out that day he and his family were in a auto accident and the whole family died. And he showed up in the bedroom through the ectoplasmic portal in the bedroom. And so that's kind of where it all started. I was born and raised Presbyterian. My mom took a jaunt with the Jehovah's Witnesses when I was 10. And even though I was still seeing things, I became afraid of my gifts because of traditional religion, which is a lot of reasons why some of these souls don't cross over too and they connect on people. But because of that, I would run out of the room just as fast as anybody else when I would see something. So it wasn't until I came forward that I purchased a house that was so badly haunted that I never moved into it. I wrote a book about it. I've actually got a book series with that one that reconnected me with people of like mind. So I didn't feel so like such a weirdo anymore. And I was then able to nurture my gifts and that sort of thing. So I've always had the gift of second sight. I've been a nurse for 40 years. I've since retired. I also have a degree in biological science as well as a certified death doula. I've worked in end of life care 17 years of those 40 years as a nurse. So I've seen people come out of their bodies at the time of death. I've been in the room for some very beautiful things of hearing people talk about babies that haven't been born yet and a blind woman that could see the color of her son's shirt because her deceased husband was telling her. So, and again, also the medical community saying that those are hallucinations. They're always saying that people are hallucinating. And some of these people are gifted, and some of these people legitimately have these, as Jerry said, these parasitic attachments that will latch on to people for all of the reasons that he had already listed. But so I've been able to experience, as there's a dark side to paranormal, there's a light side to paranormal, which is a beautiful angelic part and death and dying, which is a whole nother show, not this one, but
Why didn't you start off a few years earlier when you were doing your internship at the psych hospital?
okay. I went back to school later in life in my 40s to further my nursing degree. And after having that experience with the haunted house, excuse me, they're messing with me. But the haunted house that I was so haunted I never moved into, but there were people getting clawed in that house. Um,
I've seen that.
yeah, when I
Can we
went
talk
to my
about that at some point, Lynn? Can we go back to that
sure.
story at some point? I'll make a note for us to go. That's so interesting. We have to talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, well, the reason why I'm mentioning the clawing part is because when I went through the rotation in the psych ward, I was having my psych class. I had to go in and monitor people a little bit differently than as a nurse. You don't put your hands on them. It's more hands off and monitoring than you would as a nurse, where you're caring for people and touching people and that sort of thing. And there were 8 nurses and a teacher. We went into this area that was the intake area. And we actually had to sign papers that if we got hit with something or bitten or pinched or punched, that we couldn't hold the facility responsible, because the people in the intake area, they were just balancing their meds. So these people were, some of them were still very combative. They were still out there. kind of thing. So as we're standing there and the teacher's gone to the nurse's station to see about getting our assignment for patients, there was a young woman, looked to be in her early 20s, short hair, a little bit chunky, fuller figured, and she walked over to the group and she pointed at me and she said, "You can help me. I know you can." And of course, in that moment, I'm embarrassed and I'm looking over my shoulder and I'm like, please, please don't let her be talking to me, because I didn't want to be Lynn the weirdo that day. I just wanted to go in and be Lynn the student nurse like everybody else. So we were then ushered out of that room. However, myself and another nurse were placed back in there. And this young woman, she had on a pair of very short shorts, a top that was like a tube top with straps so you could see a lot of her skin. And I'm mentioning this because when my fellow nurse and I were sitting at the picnic tables that were bolted to the floor doing our notations on our patients, they have segments of things that they do, like they'll go and sit through a counseling session or they'll go meet with their social worker. And ours were away doing those things at that time. So we were charting. The young lady walks over and she sits down next to me. She starts talking to both of us, the other nurse and I, about how she had been molested and raped by her pastor when she was like age 10. Then her mother got remarried when she was 14, and the stepfather started raping her. So she ran away at age 16 and started devil worship. And she realized that that wasn't the right thing for her to do either. And she started hearing voices, and she could hear 25 different voices, and they were diagnosing her with schizophrenia. And I'm looking at this woman's skin, and she is covered in claw marks, and they look like cat scratches. Sometimes they're single, sometimes there's a couple of them, like 3 or 4 of them in a row and side by side. But she had like single ones, and they were going on all different angles, and they were in areas on her back that there is no way, unless she was a contortionist, that she could have reached herself in that position and made those claw marks on herself. And she was, yeah, and she was even talking to us about the fact that one of the voices had a very, very long fingernail and was scratching the inside of her female parts, and the facility was saying that she was self-inflicting those. And I'm like, this girl's got, these are claw marks, because I recognized them from that house that I had previously owned, where my best friend was clawed to the point of bleeding on her back and stomach. Well, I stood next to her, and there was a demon in the room, a hellhound that was going in between our legs and stuff at that time. So she gets called away for her turn for whatever her meeting was, or meds or whatever. And as she gets up to walk away, I can see on her back, and forgive me, I don't have the picture here with me because I kind of raced to pull things together, but it appeared like potatoes, clear potatoes, stuck all over her back, like they were stuck inside of a clear pillowcase. They were clustered together like grapes over each shoulder. And some of the faces were inverted, so the mouth was on the top and the eyes were on the bottom. Excuse me. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, no joke. She's hearing 25 different voices. She's got attachments on her. Excuse me. I don't know why this sometimes happens, because they don't like being talked about. But anyway, I haven't had a tickle in my throat all day. So she gets up and she walks away, and I'm just thinking to myself, you know, this poor lady, you know, she really is hearing these voices, and here they are, you know, claiming that she has schizophrenia. So when she came back, I noticed that she went into her room, and I went and I knocked on her door frame, and she invited me in. And I said to her, I said, if you repeat what I'm going to tell you, they're going to think that you're crazier and keep you in here longer. But I believe that you are hearing 25 different voices because you got attachments on your back. And the one thing that I noticed about her face is it started to kind of look agitated. Her facial expression started, and she turned away from me and started to walk away. And I proceeded, the way that they were connected, and I know I'm jumping around, is it looked like a horn, or like a hollow horn, kind of a brownish tan color, and it came to the top of her shoulder and clasped underneath her armpit, but didn't go all the way around. And there was a little bit of a gap where it was elevated. And I do take them off of people. I haven't been doing it as much lately because I've had some other things in my own life going on. And you have to be very balanced and very clear, not sick when you do these sort of things because they will exacerbate anything you've got going on. But I couldn't help myself. Excuse me. So I reached underneath them and I pulled them away and they started to fall to the ground. I started stomping them into the ground. Some of them were rolling away. And the lady immediately turned around. Her face was more softened. And she said, "It felt like you were pulling grass off my back." And I told her, I said, "Look, this is a temporary fix. Some of them rolled over by your bed. They can reattach. Where you were living before you came here probably has them there too. But when you get out of here, you need to find someone that can help you remove those attachments." And lo and behold, I was in a store. We have a store here called a Walmart, which is kind of a little bit of everything store. And I was in looking at candles. I was crouching down on the floor. And all of a sudden, I see these two women at the end of the aisle, and they're kind of whispering to each other. And I'm checking my shoe for toilet paper and making sure my zipper's not down. I'm wondering why they're pointing at me, this sort of thing. And all of a sudden, I heard one of the young ladies say to the other one, "I know that's her." And I thought, oh, well, maybe they've read one of my books. Maybe it's a fan, coming over. So I stood up and she walked over and she said, "Do you remember me?" And she looked familiar, but she looked so different. She had lost weight. She had this cute little blonde bob. Her skin was pink, whereas before it looked kind of an ashen color because they were sucking her energy from her, which they do that. And she said, "You're the nurse. You're the nurse that helped me." And she did go somewhere and get help with those attachments, just like I said. And she said that she was no longer on her schizophrenic medication. She was now on a low dose of anti-anxiety medication that she would take as needed. And she was going into her second year of dental hygiene school. So it totally turned her life around. And the thing is, too, is, a lot of these people in these mental facilities, they're gifted. They're not they're not crazy. Some of them do have attachments. I've seen a lot of the people with addiction. They have attachments that I call archons in my book that look like they can be a crab shape, they can be a spider shape, or they look reptilian, sometimes with a tail that curls, and sometimes a human buttocks and no tail of that reptilian type. And they attach also at the shoulders, and they have like the 4 finger attachments, 4 toe attachments, and they attach in at the hips. The spiders kind of collect the 2 legs and the 2 legs and attach, and the crabs do the same thing. But their heads align with the people's heads, and you'll see them peeking over every once in a while, and they try to hide. And the thing that's very distinct about those is that they have a flap that starts at the top of their head and goes back to the nape of their head. It comes out to a point like a fin, only it's floppy. And I know this because when people come away from their attachments, and the thing is, I want to mention this, the difference between a person with an addictive attachment and a person who's got attachments from schizophrenia, they have not invited those attachments. Those attachments have been parasites that have latched onto someone who has suffered great trauma, and their natural energetic field has holes in it like Swiss cheese from either surgery or trauma, and they find ways in. The people with addiction invite those parasitic things in due to their addiction, and they come in and and usually it's entities that are also addicted to the substance. There are many kinds of addictions. If people could see all of the dead people that I see standing around them in bars and cigarette breaks, and the guy that's in the porno peep show, he might be shocked that he's not in there alone. He's got a whole bunch of dead people standing in there watching with him, and he might want to charge admission for what he's doing in there. But if they could see what I see, a lot of them would never ever touch the stuff again. And when we pass away, we do keep all of our senses. We actually add on the additional one of telepathy and a couple of others as well. But with that being said, a lot of people, they argue about the smell because there's no olfactory nerve, but their ability to smell is memory recall. Like if you think about popcorn popping or chocolate chip cookies or pumpkin pie baking, you can smell it even though there's nothing cooking, if you think about it. So, and that's how powerful the mind is with thought and things like that way. But so, I mean, I saw many things in this psych ward, people that were being considered ill with hallucinations from schizophrenia. I have another lady also that I could share with you if you'd like.
Yeah, go.
Okay. There was a little lady, and it was so sad because they had this one section, and there was all of these people that were in there. It was all women in there, in this side of the room. And the nurse was telling us how very rarely did any of the people in there get visitors because everybody thought grandma's nuts, or their mom's nuts, so they don't bother to come and visit them anymore because they're woo-woo and everybody's uncomfortable. Plus the kind of energy that kind of gets carried with some of the people with attachments. It's a little, if you're sensitive to it, it's a little uncomfortable. But anyway, we went into this room and there was this lovely lady and she was sitting at this round table and there were 3 other chairs and she was in the 4th chair and she's having a conversation. Perfect hostess, but it was like she was on the telephone. By what she was saying, you could tell what the response was. So it wasn't like this vocabulary salad that they usually have, a mix of words. She was being very articulate, very clear. Would you like some coffee? Would you like some sugar in your coffee? Oh, is that too hot? Be careful when you drink it. And the nurse said, oh, that's so and so, and she's talking to people that aren't there. But I could clearly see in all 3 of those chairs, there were spirits sitting with her at that table. And this woman wasn't schizophrenic. She was an empath. She could see them. And because people are not comfortable with people with gifts, they try to demonetize them. They try to make them crazy. When they don't realize that these gifts are God-given gifts, you're born with them. Everybody is. They're either nurtured or they're not. You're either made to be afraid of them or you grow with them. And unfortunately, the generations past, what you can't see, feel, or taste is a no-no or scary or woo-woo. And that's why people are so afraid of people with gifts. They're also afraid of people that are passing, talking about loved ones being in the room that are deceased, even if it's somebody that they know. They get real uncomfortable with it. They want to run and get the nurse to give them the meds to quiet down the patient because they don't like hearing about dead people standing with them in the room.
And do you have, Pete, any doubt in your mind whatsoever that the voices that these people are hearing are spirits? Is there any doubt in your mind?
No, they're parasitic. They are some of them, people have the choice to cross over or not at the time of death. Sometimes they remain here on Earth for reasons like one that I love to tell this story. There was a fellow that was passing and I was in front of his room and I saw the spirit of this man peeking around the poles. And I kind of invited him over to the cart, and I'm abbreviating this. And this gentleman, he was a handsome spirit and he appeared to be like from the 1800s with the way that he was dressed. He didn't appear to be extremely rich, but he wasn't poor either because he had nice clothes on, but not like fancy clothes. And he had this very heavy Irish brogue to his voice, redheaded, sort of thing. And I asked him, I said, why haven't you crossed over? And he said, "Milady, I can't cross over." And I'm like, "Oh, sure you can. I can help you cross over. This person in this room right here is getting ready to cross, and their loved ones, you could see the angels bulging out of the room and the loved ones that were coming to collect this person." And I'm like, "Well, I could help you." And he says, "I can't cross over." He says, "My wife and my girlfriend are on the other side, and neither one knew about the other." His wife and his mistress is what he said. And neither one knew about the other. So there are sometimes reasons that they choose not to cross over. And a lot of times they'll attach to somebody just out of boredom to have something to do. And then there are these nasty ones. I recently sent a picture today, actually, to Jerry about, I want to call it a daybuk. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's that the Jewish religion talks about the spirit that is someone that chooses not to cross over because of their, what is the word? I can't pronounce the word, their maladaptive, for lack of a better word, or their creepy nature that they had when they were still living. I can't think of the word, but malevolent. There you go, malevolent. So, and they go ahead and they attach on people, and a lot of times the people with schizophrenia, that's those types of people, those miserable souls that didn't cross over because they were nasty in life and they just want to create chaos with people. I mean, there's so much stuff coming out right now that even about satanic ritual abuse and the movie stars doing it in order to get, I mean, and the politicians, I mean, I don't even want to get your show kicked off, so I won't even
No, it's
go
fine.
there.
You can say whatever you want, really. I was going to say,
Okay.
so I was under the understanding that the entities that attach to people with, let's say, that have schizophrenia, they're from a different dimension. They're sort of reptilians, archons. I don't know what you'd call them, but you're also saying it could just be people that have died and they don't want to cross over and they attach to almost what encourage these people to get drunk and then they can feel the effects of that as well, or get involved
Right.
in carnal pleasure and then they can somehow vicariously feel that themselves. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Yes, and also what you mentioned, they can be reptilian, they can be alien, they can be a lot of things, but usually, like in the case of this young woman, most of hers were just the voices, but there always seems to be one or two, sometimes three, that are more malicious, and they kind of control the rest. So, so even like with the voices, like what they were telling Jerry, they'll tell the other spirits the same thing. If the other spirit's like, yeah, that lady says she can cross me over, I want to cross over. No, you don't. She's lying and you're going to go to hell. They play the same game with the spirits as they do with the humans. So, it makes
They tell there's ranks of them.
yes.
It's like in the army. You got the regular foot soldiers who appear to be assigned to destroy a particular person. And they're told that if they don't do that, they will cease to exist. You know, and there is no light. They're told there's no light in them. And I played around with that for a while with the voices. I'd say, okay, let's go see. With talking to one of the voices, and I said, let's go. We'll go together, and we imagine that we're going down deep into the the spirit of the entity. And I said, do you see the light yet? And he goes, no, not yet. After a couple of times, they go, okay, I see it. I said, what's it look like? They said it's a dim orange light. Okay. And I would tell them, well, your leaders told you that you had no light in you. So they lied to you. How do you feel about that? And they were furious at that. And it was one time after time after time. Each one I did that with, they were furious that they'd been lied to. And that struck me as strange because they were liars themselves. I mean, they lied about everything, but somehow that was important to them. And they were told that the light would hurt them. And I'd tell them, well, just stick your hand in the light. They go, no, it'll get burned. It'll burn me. And I go, no, it won't. Just quickly stick your hand in there. It didn't burn them. I said, okay, walk into the light. And they do. And I said, now call somebody that loves you or cares about you to come and get you out of here, because now you're in trouble. You've talked to me, you realized that they were lying to you, and you go back there, they're going to beat the crap out of you. So call somebody to come and get you. And somebody would show up, a grandmother, a mother. In some cases, it was an animal, a horse or a dog or something would come and get them and then take them away. Then after that particular voice was gone. So there was one day I was working with one guy, had three voices. We got rid of all three just the same way. Okay. And he insisted that was all there was, three voices. After we got rid of the third one, another voice appeared. And I said, where'd that come from? And he said, that was their boss and he's pissed. And I said, boss, you want to leave? He goes, no, get out of here. So yeah, there's echelons of them. And there was one girl where they weren't tormenting her enough, and their voices was replaced by meaner voices that would torment her more. So you get into it, it gets interesting.
So Lynn,
It does.
Yeah, what
Excuse me,
oh
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
sorry, Lynn. I was just gonna say, so you've seen some of these entities then? Like what you said you stomped on a few, like what were they that you were seeing on people? This one where you said it's like pulling grass off her.
They actually appeared like misshapen potatoes. I mean, they were decent size, but they were clustered together like grapes. So a lot of times when you see spirits traveling through the air, and I apologize for constantly clearing my throat. I also apologize if I'm talking a little too fast. So let me know if I need to slow down. But they were clustered together like grapes. And I thought that when I went to pull them off that they would be harder. And the thing is most of them travel in orbs when they're out of body. Even if your loved ones that have crossed over come back, like if you take a picture at during the holidays, and you can say, let's say you have a deceased parent, and you say, "Mom, I want you to get in the picture." They love to get in pictures. So you might see that orb type thing. And a lot of people are like, oh, no, that's just the camera. Oh, no. There's a look to the orb. It has some coloration to it. It's sometimes kind of milky. Sometimes there are two of them, one more clear and another one that travel together.
You look
And a
close
lot
to
of,
the structure to them also.
yes. And if you look close to even over people's shoulders, you might see a smiling face if you look at that sort of thing. But these things were in an orb type um, but misshapen looking thing because there's no bone structure and they were kind of crammed together, some of them like grapes, so they were like smushing in on one another, so that's why some of them were more elongated and looking that way. But I mean, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen aliens, I've seen Bigfoot, I've seen hell dogs, I've seen demons, I've seen a lot of things that most people never see. I'm kind of desensitized to them. I have a and again, they don't like me talking about this. I have my method of removing them quickly from the room. They don't like anything positive. They don't like love. They don't like laughter. They don't like joy. So even the people that that are hearing voices, tell them to laugh. Tell them to say, "Oh, I love me, I love me, I love me." They can't stand it. It's like reading Psalms. They start screaming like a bunch of worms on a hot plate. You know what I'm saying? They can't stand that because they've lost that ability, especially if they're demonic. They don't have the ability to have love or joy or even grieving for that matter. But man, they definitely feed off anything that's negative. It empowers them and gives them the opportunity and the ability to do more physical acts on people.
Yeah, so those of you who are hearing voices, do not watch war movies or murder mysteries or
No,
any of that negative stuff. It feeds them. They get stronger by watching that stuff. And stay away from negative people. Don't get isolated. You know,
that's true.
they don't want you to have any family. They don't want you to have any friends. They want you isolated in a room by yourself where they're just working you over day after day after day after day, listening to their crap.
Right. And they're not inside of you, people. They are talking in your ear. And the reason why they can tell you some things about yourself that nobody could possibly know, like what you were doing in the bathroom on Tuesday, it's because they're watching you. So it's not because they're in your head, you're hearing them. So they're like around. When I see people with that archonic thing on them, the head is much smaller than the body that's like a backpack on their backs. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Um, I'll see it every once in a while, peek from one side to the other, and again, it's very distinct that the head is much smaller than the body, kind of the opposite of a baby, where the head's much bigger and the body's much smaller in proportion. So and I kind of lost the track that I was going with that. But I mean, I see a lot of things in between the interdimensional veils. I see Fae elementals. I've got them on my property. I have pictures of those. So yeah,
Faye?
I mean, I've seen a lot of things.
What's Faye? Sorry.
Fae elementals like fairies and
Oh,
gnomes and things like
oh,
that.
really?
I
Oh, wow.
I I have pictures that I took.
Yeah,
I'll be happy to share them with you.
yeah.
So yes, and I didn't believe in that kind of stuff either, but now everything is just kind of presented that way. And I know it sounds off, but they're higher dimensional beings. They vibrate at a higher frequency. They live on the earth with us just like we do, but we don't see them because of their higher frequency.
Do
Just like
do they attach as well, Lynn, to us?
no, but they can. They don't really want to attach to us. they're they only became angry and naughty when they were deceived so many times by even the Native Americans. They used to feed the puckwudgies to the giants so that the giants wouldn't eat their tribes. So they betrayed them. And then the farmers, they would help with the work, and they just simply wanted part of the, whatever was grown, the potatoes or the vegetables, for themselves as their payment. And then the farmers would do mean things to trick them, and they were mistreated. So they kind of disappeared because of the mentality of humans and the frequency that they were choosing to lower themselves to vibrate in, that they couldn't be around them anymore. And now people think that they're ghosts in their houses, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's something like that. And again, we could do a whole nother show on that. And like I said, I come with pictures. So I have pictures of ghosts that I've taken myself. I have pictures of, I sent Jerry a picture that'll blow your mind, but I kind of asked him not to show it to anybody because it will bring those things into your space. They can travel, they're energetic, just like thought is. They can travel through your electronics, your telephone. I mean, anything like that. You're talking about them, they get curious, they want to come near. So what Jerry was saying about people avoiding violence and things like that, because we are literally electric and water in a meat suit, but our thoughts and all of the things that the medical field does not treat is the energy field. They treat the mental stuff, the physical stuff, anything that you can see, touch, or feel, or lick or taste, there, or imagine. But they don't deal with the energetic field that we all have. And
And your spirit is energy, your feelings are energy, your thoughts are energy, your memories energy. They don't deal with any of that.
When I had purchased that haunted house that I never moved into, I had 4 different workers come. The first 3 didn't stay past 2:00 in the afternoon. With the third one, I finally found out why. I can tell you that story if you'd like. I don't want to take away from what we're talking about with the schizophrenia and stuff.
That's fine. It can go. We can go off and come back. Yeah.
Okay. I had, after having 2 people that didn't come back, one guy didn't even come back for his tools or to be paid. But the third one was a friend of mine's cousin who I worked with her. She and I were nurses together in the same facility. And he came to put in wooden flooring. I needed wooden flooring put in. I had purchased the house in March, and I wasn't going to move in until the summer because my kids had 8 more weeks of school to finish, and I didn't want to change it and transfer them. I made the 30-minute commute to and from so that they could finish out their school year with their friends and then start in the new school fresh after the summer. And so I had workers coming in to do renovations. And the third one, he and I were there together. I was in the hallway painting, and he was in the room just on the opposite side of the wall of me putting in the wooden flooring, tongue and groove flooring. And I turn and I see this young man coming up the stairs. The house was a split level. So you had a double entry door and a foyer that you would come into, and then you had descending stairs and ascending stairs that would go up or go down. And we were up on the upper level, which is where the living room and the bedrooms and kitchen and stuff were. Downstairs was a large family room, huge garage, and a nice big bonus room down there that you could use for whatever you wanted. So anyway, I see this young man coming up to the top of the stairs, and he was so real. I mean, he had brown parted down the middle, kind of 80s style, feathered back hair, a white Oxford shirt, jeans, penny loafers, no socks. And he had, looked like he had really bad acne, like ruddy, darker complexion to his cheeks. And he was so real that I turned and I said, "Did you knock?" Because I thought it was some disoriented person that just walked in, or that they knocked and I didn't hear them knock. And the house had sold so fast. I mean, it wasn't even on the MLS, but for one day, because there's a story with that too. But anyway, then when I looked at him directly, I could see the waffling to the air. The way that I see spirits is out of my peripheral vision. I can see them as plain as I can see you. I can tell you their eye color, what they have on. And yes, people, they do show up in clothes. I've only had one show up naked, but that's another story too. Nobody wants to see mom naked if they're getting ready to cross over. So, mom, please put some clothes on. But anyway, when I look at them directly, if they're at a distance, it's like looking at a plate glass window where you can see your own reflection that's kind of opaque. So they're kind of opaque when I see them. When they're closer, I see energetic waffling to the air like gas fumes or hot vapors coming off of a road, that kind of waffling appearance. And I could see the waffling appearance. So I knew that he was still there. And I thought, oh, okay, we have a ghost in the house. That's what's been turning on and off the lights and the water and, and opening the cabinets and slamming the doors and doing all of these things that were happening in the house. So that day I left to go pick up my kids at around 2:00. And I'm sitting in the car line at the school waiting to pick them up. And I get a call from Bobby, who's putting down the flooring in my son's room. And he says, I have to leave. I have to leave right now. There's something about this house that I've never experienced. And the line dropped. So I'm calling him for almost an hour. I finally get a hold of him. And I said, well, what happened? I've got furniture getting ready to come in there. I need the floor to be done. Everything's lined up. I've now sold the place that I was living in, so I've got a certain amount of days to get out and that sort of thing. And he said, oh, it was nothing, but I'd rather be there when you're there. So he ended up never coming back. And I ended up asking my friend at work, I said, next time you see Bobby, would you please ask him, what happened? I have a feeling it was something paranormal. And she said, okay. So July came, and in America we have our 4th of July holiday, and he was at my friend's house, and he was drinking, and he was feeling a little talkative. And she asked him, she said, what happened, at Lynn's house that you didn't, stay and finish? And he said, oh my gosh, he said, I feel so bad. He said, Lynn is such a nice lady, but that house is words that I probably can't say on the radio because it's an F-bomb, and that it's effed up, is what he said. And that he said that when he was in the room doing the tongue and groove flooring, he had a trowel and a block and a mallet to kind of tap in the tongue and groove flooring with the block of wood. And he had just put a piece of flooring down, and he went to reach for his mallet and his block of wood to tap it in, and they were gone. And he was on this like a garden seat with wheels that would wheel back and forth because he couldn't be down on his knees. So he thought maybe he rolled over him. So he scoots over and they're not there. And then he turns to look right where the bedroom door was, about 7 feet away. And there were his tools lined up right in front of the door, paralleling each other. And he's like, it kind of freaked him out. But he got up and he just assumed that I had returned and that I snuck in. I was playing a joke on him. He thought that I had walked in quietly and picked up the tools and put them there and walked out. So he got up and he picked up the tools and he starts calling for me in the hallway. And of course, I'm not there. So he, he's kind of spooked at this point. So he turns he had a battery operated radio, one of those boom boxes. And he also turned the lights on because the sun had now gone to the opposite side of the house. And he said no sooner than he sat down and started to put more adhesive onto another piece of the flooring, the light turned itself off, and then the radio turned itself off, and he could hear his tools dragging behind him, and he's watching them line up by the door. And he said that he couldn't get out of there fast enough. So the fourth guy stayed because he was stoned all the time, and he carried his own arcana in his back, so he was okay. He was not bothered by them at all because they already had him. And he did good work.
So what were these then? Were these entities, ghosts? What do you think they were?
There were 2 demons. They were identified. I had a paranormal group come up from Georgia that got pictures, the infrared cameras, the recordings, all of that. They identified one as a hell dog. The other one was identified as like a second level demon. Like they have gargoyles and they have cherubim, and they're, the first one's going in the opposite direction. Then they go in the opposite direction. And one of them was a young man that had hung himself in the house, which was the young man that I saw coming to the top of the stairs.
And Lynn, what is a hell dog?
A hell dog is a dog that protects ferociously whatever space that it is placed on, and it usually protects something that is evil, that is buried. They work for Satan. They yeah, they're not they're nasty. They're really,
Guardians
really
of
nasty.
gateways. I'm just looking at it here. It says they're guardians of gateways
Yes, they're
associated
guardians.
with omens of death, possession, or malevolent entities, known to emit sulfuric smells, disappear without trace, or move silently.
I did have a Georgia paranormal group come along with a Presbyterian minister that was the minister of my church that I reached out to. That I had dated him like 2 years before. I was single, and I had, when you're in that kind of a situation, you have to reach out to people that knew you before, so they don't think you're crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I contacted him, and his church actually told me that when he brought it up to the church, that he was more afraid of the Bible thumpers than he was of the things in the house that I had just bought. And he had made mention that he was going to take funds from the church to pay the paranormal group that I had found to come up from Georgia, which came up with the infrared cameras and all of that sort of thing. Once they thought that they had cleared them out, they didn't. They didn't clear them out. What had happened is I had gone back after they told me that everything was okay to go back, because I had even stopped taking my children. My son one night spent the night in the house before I had all of this done, and he woke up with bite marks on his legs. He had taken a bath that night. He was like 7 years old, 8 years old. He had taken a bath, and he had on shorts and a shirt of Power Rangers or whatever it was that was popular at that time, that he was wearing his character pajamas. And I would have seen the bites on him. And he slept in the house. And that was the night that I saw the hell dog for the first time, coming up from the lower levels, crossing the front entry doors, and shooting down the hallway in front of me. And I had my dog with us that would not come into the house, but I had to carry her in. And I hear her growling down the hallway where that thing headed, ferociously. So I go down to see what she's growling at. And she's standing in the doorway of the bedroom with her hair raised on her back, just fixated on that door. And I kind of pet her to calm her down, and she put her ears back for a minute, but then she was still fixated on that door. So other things happened. Finally, I laid down and went to sleep. I'm trying to rationalize it. I haven't had anything to eat. My blood sugar's low. I've been painting with fumes. I could be seeing things myself. Maybe it was a motorcycle going under a street light outside, since not all of the windows were covered. But there's nothing that could have had it come up and go across and then come up and shoot down. So the next morning when we woke up, I asked my daughter how she slept, and she said, I didn't. She said, I felt like something was standing in the doorway staring at me all night long. And then when my son woke up, he had 3 sets of bite marks on his legs. He had 2 on one leg and 1 on the other, 2 on the thighs and 1 on the lower leg just past his knee. Literally like dog bite marks. You could count the teeth. They were purple. They didn't break the skin, but you could literally count the teeth. Now, I had a Schnauzer dog with me. She wasn't bite prone type thing. And the mouth was smaller than hers, but bigger than a rat's. You know what I'm saying? And again, this house was new to me. I didn't know if it had, rodent problems or anything. I was just learning about the house myself. So when my son woke up, I pointed them out and I said, Austin, I said, what happened? What happened to your legs? And he's looking down and he's touching them. And he's like, I don't know. Well, if something had bitten you hard enough to leave those marks, you would have felt it. But they do this kind of energetic thing where I'm sure you've heard people talking about that they've had moments where they were laying pinned by something and could only move their eyeballs. I mean, they can do that kind of thing or make you sleep through something. So those bites occurred during that night, and it was that thing in the doorway that had bit him. So after that happened, I didn't take my kids back to the house anymore until I had gotten groups, multiple groups. I think I had 13 different denominations come through there, all of them professing that they could get it out, and they didn't. I mean, I thought the Catholic priest that I had come there was going to wet his pants. He was shaking so bad, he was adding to the problem because he was so frightened. They were feeding off of his loosh in there. So anyway.
Who are you going to call, eh? That's the movie goes.
Exactly. And people, I mean, that was even back, and the house wasn't old either. The house was built in the 1970s. So what I did learn is it's not about the age of the house. A brand new house can be haunted if it's built in the wrong place. It's about the age of the ground that it's built on and what was there. So come to find out from one of the ladies that had come, the lady that had come that was the American Indian that came through the back door, the wolf presented itself at the top of the stairs and it would make this sound like a didgeridoo. It had this electronic wah, wah, wah kind of buzzing sound when it would communicate with people. And so she would ask it a question and you'd hear this whoa, 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 you know, the buzzing, gurgling kind of sound. And then she'd ask it something else. So she was communicating with it. And when it came to the top of the stairs, she said to me, well, you did say it had big feet, didn't you? And I'm like, yeah. And I said, why is it so ugly? She says, well, it's not ugly where it comes from, type thing. And she was communicating, and the guy was standing right next to me, and he's like, whoa. I mean, he saw, all three of us saw it present at the top of the stairs where she was just sitting off to the side, you know, trying to talk to it. And it had made mention that it was there to guard. It was a guardian, that it was on the property guarding something. And it turned out that there were ley lines underneath the house, that the house, when it was built, clipped into the ley lines. She told me that if the house had been built just 3 feet over, it wouldn't be haunted because those things were coming in up through a fireplace that I had in the lower level and was using that. And so she tried to, of course, clear it out as well. But after having, in between her and having the Episcopalian priest and the Presbyterian minister there at the same time, I had gone back with my children just for a day. I needed to mow the grass, and my son brought a friend with him. They were climbing in the tree. And when I'm in the garage putting gasoline in the lawnmower, my son's friend comes through the front door, comes down the stairs to the garage, and he's wincing and he's holding his neck to the side. And, you know, you could tell that it really hurt him. And I said, what happened? Did Austin hit you with a stick? You know, what's the matter? And I moved his hand away. There was nothing there. And he says, I don't know. I just got to the bottom of the stairs and it just hit me. And then he started to retch, which was a telltale sign in this house that you were under spiritual attack. The vomiting, you wouldn't actually vomit, but you would retch so hard that you could hardly breathe when they would attack you. So I ushered him to the car. I knew what it was when he started retching. I'm like, those things are still here. And I called to my children. I said, go to the car. We're leaving. Do not come in the house. If you're in the house, do not come down the stairs to the lower level. So my son races to the car. My daughter didn't hear me. So she comes down the stairs to the lower level. And as soon as she gets to that bottom stair, she goes, ah, and she starts grabbing her ankle and she cannot bear weight. She said, I didn't twist my ankle. I don't know what's wrong. And she's like down on, you know, crawling on all fours and trying to, you know, pick up her ankle because it's burning so bad. When they strike you, it's a burning feeling that goes to the bone, and it hurts really, really bad. I was attacked during one of the clearings. I was attacked during the clearing with the Presbyterian minister and the Episcopalian priest in there. So I know that. And when they put the cross over where I was hit, it immediately stopped. And they said for them to leave me alone. So it was, again, an energetic thing, but it can be very hot and very painful when they do it. So I helped my daughter get to the car because she couldn't bear weight. And I closed up the garage and I got in the car and we left. And as we kind of got down a couple of blocks, everybody started to feel better. But I called up the Episcopalian priest when I got home and I said, there is no way that I'm going to move my family into that house. I said, those things are not gone. They attacked my children and they're my children's friend today. I said, so I'm going to sell it. And he's like, no, don't sell it. That's your property. You need to keep that house. He said, you need to command them to leave in the name of Jesus Christ. And I said, look, your house is supposed to be your haven. Every single time a window's open and a piece of paper blows off, I'm going to be up screaming, you know, I command you to leave in the name of Jesus Christ, even if it just got blown off by a breeze. I will never be able to relax in that home. I said, and not only that, if I have family over, let's say for a Thanksgiving dinner, and I see a demon walk through the house, and I stand up while everybody's sitting there and start screaming for it to get out in the name of Jesus Christ. How long do you think my guests are going to stay?
Hey,
You
Lynn,
know, and
how often do you think regular people are attacked by these things out of the clear blue?
oh, a lot.
That's what I thought.
A lot. And they're very active right now because of the frequency changes that are elevating. They are baiting people right now, really, really bad.
Yeah, and it's
Really, really bad.
always negative stuff.
Yes.
And,
And they will pretend to be something.
well, they'll pretend to be your thoughts.
Yes.
That's what's so dangerous about them. They sound just like your thoughts in most cases.
They do. Some of them show up physically to the people that can see them. My son was at a place recently, and my mother has passed away. My entire family's gone except for me, and of course I have my children. Out of 6 of us, my mother, father, 2 sisters, and brother are all on the other side. But my mother kind of is a guardian angel over my son, and my son feels her and actually sees her sometimes. And he said that it was like 3 o'clock in the morning and something was bumping his bed. And he woke up, and my mother was standing there with 3 other spiritual beings next to the bed. And he's like, Grandma, I got to get up for work in 3 hours. Why are you here now? Come back later. And she just smiled again. And he's like, no, really, you need to go because I have to sleep. This isn't a good time. And when she turned, he said she had a reptilian tail coming out from behind her. So it wasn't my mother's spirit. They're mimicking people that are familiar. And these are these reptilian things, these demonic things, all of the things that were mentioned,
Yeah.
that are
That's why it's
active
so
on this
dangerous
earth.
for people to play with Ouija boards
Oh, yeah.
and channel things because they have no idea what they're speaking to or what they're channeling. And I've spoken to several patients who were playing with a Ouija board and they were communicating with this thing. And then after a while, it would appear in their heads. So they would start hearing voices just like the schizophrenics. And they were just as crazy as any of the schizophrenics after that.
Yeah, even with me, sometimes when things approach, because I still see things, walking through every once in a while, or people call me for help and I'm in their house trying to clear things out. But sometimes even with myself and some people that I know that have gifts as well, we've all said that we have to verify that the spirit that's there is who it really is, and I do that simply by sending them a love light from my heart chakra. And if it's someone like your mother or somebody that has passed away and is just coming back to check in on you and visit for a minute, they will relish in the love coming from you. If it's anything lower level or dark that's even trying to appear like a person that's familiar, because something about the invitation, they have to be invited in order to stay.
Like a vampire.
Exactly.
Like a vampire, they have to get invited into the home. Yeah.
Exactly.
To
So they'll
attack you.
come in and they'll try to look like someone familiar, or they'll come in as a child. And everybody say, oh, it's just a little child ghost. It's innocent. It's nothing. No, it may not be a real child. You don't know. It could be something posing. So, yeah, because demons and lower level things cannot stand any of the positive emotions that I had mentioned before, of love, of gratitude, of joy, of laughter, and any of those sorts of things like that. They can't stand it. It's like a stench in the room with them. It's like repellent. So when
you were talking about a love light, I mean,
yeah,
how do you go about doing that? That's nothing like romantic love, right?
no, it's very pure and it's energetic. Your heart chakra lets out a pink light, and you can just envision heart-shaped light coming out, and you can be saying in your head, love, 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 or you can do it out loud, love, 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 and send it in the direction of the spirit. Send it in. It even helps with people that are having arguments that are in physical body. You can send that person that love light energy and it kind of diffuses things. It really works. But with spirits, if they're negative spirits, they can't stand to be around it. They can't get out of the room fast enough because it's like a bad stench in the room for them. And that's
the same thing.
Yep. And that's how you can determine whether it is a loved one that is genuinely come to visit, or if it is something posing as a loved one that wants the invitation so that they can stay here and create havoc.
What you beam the
And you've
love
got
at you beam the love at it, and if it holds the love, you know it's genuine. If it gets burnt out like a kind of a wasp in in the sunlight, you know it's an
abs
entity, a negative entity, right? Yeah.
yes, they can't stand it. And that does not apply to like elementals and fae, because they were here before the time of religion and they relish in love and things too. And I just want to mention this really quick. I know I was talking about fairies and some people think that that's woo woo, but like I said, I have pictures. Um, they've been demonetized also by the Christian religion because their leader was Lucifer when Lucifer was God's favorite and the intelligent angel of music, and then he took things in his own hands and got kicked out. And like the Hatfields and the McCoys or the Republicans and the Democrats, they follow their team without question. And now they're kind of questioning and coming back. But they have emotions just like we do as humans. They have the ability to love. They grieve loss. They have joy. They have anger. They have all of that. And demons can't do that. They can't experience love. They can't have joy. Laughter to them is again a repellent. Anything, even if you don't do the love, love, love thing, just start saying outside out, oh, I'm so happy today. I just love life. Isn't it beautiful? Everything's so wonderful. Make it to the point that anybody would gag on their spoon in a room if they're with you, that you're being so overly positive and so overly loving. They can't stand it. They cannot stand it.
Love it. Yeah. Can I just ask, just going back to the house again, the haunted house, just to kind of complete the loop on that a little bit. So did you say that the hellhound was eradicated? And then also when you said they, like they striking the leg, striking the shoulder, like what was what was that, the haunted man that hanged himself, or who, what was that?
No, it was the hell. It was the day that Bobby left early. The guy that was my friend's cousin.
Yeah.
I had to go back to the house because he'd left the windows opened, and I was working that weekend. And this was a Friday. I was working that weekend, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to be back until Monday to do anything with the house. So I asked my next door neighbor Ellen to come with me to the house, because on the upper level there was an air conditioner in one of the windows that we had running to pull some moisture out of the house where the flooring was drying, and I needed to pull it inside the window so that I could close the window. The windows were not the up and down kind. They were the kind that would open like this with a crank. They were the older windows. So there was this area above it with no screen that was wide open for the elements and bugs to come in. So she agreed to go with me, and I was kind of explaining to her, because that was the day that I saw the young man coming up to the spirit of the young man who had hung himself coming up to the stairs. And he was verified actually by more than one person. The neighbor verified him, what he looked like and who he was. And my daughter saw him, and we compared notes, and we were both accurate. So anyway, that was the day that I saw him. So I was telling my friend Ellen, I said, listen, I think that there's a ghost in this house. There've been some weird things happening. The lights have been turning, the locks have been unlocking themselves. The door was a key piece because it was controlled by that hell dog, and I didn't realize it at that time. So I just thought that it was a ghost. And I said, so if we get there and you're not comfortable coming in with me, it was dark outside. I didn't want to go back by myself. It was dark. And I said, then you don't have to come in with me. I'll see if the neighbor across the street's husband will help me pull in the air conditioner. She says, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm not, ghosts don't bother me. And I said, okay, type thing. I'm like, do you believe in ghosts? Hell yeah. And I said, okay. So we got there. When we went to go in, I was having trouble with getting my key out of the lock, which was a common problem with that house. And my friend walked into the foyer and she made a joke. She said, oh, you're not going to leave me here and let the boogeyman get me, are you? Well, you don't want to mock them because they have an intelligence about them, and they targeted her. So we went into the house, we pulled in the air conditioner, closed the window, and we went into the kitchen. And I had just gotten these hand-carved wooden horse heads from my daughter's bedroom. She wanted a horse theme in her room. So I had these beautiful Morgan horse heads to drape curtains over in her room. And Ellen was holding one in each hand facing the counter. I'm standing right next to her. I hear this didgeridoo sound that I had heard once before. And I didn't say anything because I thought that I was the only one hearing it. And when I turn, I can see this ectoplasmic wall from floor to ceiling that was kind of moving in on us. And all of a sudden, my friend Ellen starts screaming, and she said, oh my God, what is it? A spider bite? And she's grabbing her shirt, trying to twist it around to see if there's a hole or a bug on it that's biting through her fabric. Now, Ellen was a plus size lady. So she was so heavy that her arms, she couldn't reach to even fasten her bra strap because she was larger. So her boyfriend would have to help her do that in the mornings. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because when I lifted up her shirt and back, she had a 4.5-inch claw mark between her shoulder blades underneath her bra strap that was just starting to welt and bead blood. As a medical professional and a wound care expert, I guess I could say I'm licensed in that, also wound care. The initial response of a wound like a scratch, you'll have that welting effect before it starts to bleed. But even after a wound has gotten a scab, if you pick the scab off, that welting thing never happens again. So because it was welting and just starting to bead blood, it looked like chigger bites, but it looked like a cat scratch, just a single one. I knew that it was a fresh wound. And I asked her, I said, what happened? Did you scratch yourself? I mean, there was no furniture even in the house yet, I'm like, did you scratch yourself on the corner of the car door or something? And then she starts screaming again. And it's gotten her on the front, on her stomach, below her, just off to the left side, below her belly button, about a 2.5-inch mark. And I'm like, we need to leave right now. You go first. I wanted to go behind her so that I could lock some doors and make sure that they were locked because they weren't attacking me. I started screaming out every name that you could name God. I called for Mother Mary, Jesus, Jehovah, Yahweh, Yeshua, Buddha, Allah, you name it. I was yelling for everybody. And that wall started to push back, but it still was hovering in the doorway of the breakfast nook of this kitchen. And we left. And I mean, I didn't care how well I had locked up the house at that point. I figured if anybody wanted to break in, that house could take care of itself, but we left and got out of there. As we were driving down the road, because it was dark, I could see this luminescent thing, which was an archon, that was kind of hanging on her front like a halter top almost, but the head was bobbing back like a baby with no neck, with that thin thing on it. So I could see that on her. And she says, gosh, these things burn. They burn really, really bad. But they actually broke her skin. But they do have, and like I said, they do have an intelligence about
Oh,
them.
so that was an Archon, Lynn. I thought that was the hellhound.
No, the hellhound did the claw marks, but
Right.
it left her with an attachment on her when she went to leave.
Right. Okay.
All
That
of
was
that combined.
and that was an Archon. That wasn't something from the house. That came from a different maybe dimension, did it?
I don't know, but it was on her when we left, and it was to the front of her. But that hell dog is what caused those claw marks.
So,
So,
Lynn, when let's say you're walking around town, do you actually see these attached onto people randomly, like in your supermarket or something, or do you have to be in a certain environment to see these and in a certain frame of mind?
well, yes, I can see them. Sometimes I choose not to. I mean, I kind of go what I call look. Some I don't know how else to describe this. When sometimes I see them when I don't want to because they're just there. Otherwise, if somebody says, will you go and look, then I can purposely look and go into a different frame of mind that I can start looking for things. But I mean, there are many, many times that I'll be walking past somebody in a grocery store and I'll see a wiggly leg of a spider that's on their archon in the back. And I'll be like, woo, that 6 foot spacing from leftover from COVID is a good thing. You want to stand back from somebody like that. But I was going around purposely. Once I saw the woman with the attachments on her back in the facility, and I started purposely looking. And I would even ask my other fellow student nurses at that time, by chance does your client have schizophrenia? Yeah. How'd you know? By chance there was only one time that I got it wrong, and that was because this person was both an alcoholic and drug addict, plus they were hearing voices, so they were a combo deal. And that was the only one that I got wrong because I couldn't see the archon clearly because of the attachments that were bubbling out over the top of it, if that makes sense.
They're the roughest ones to deal with because they got the alcoholic spirits, which are dead alcoholics that are getting drunk
That too, yeah.
by jumping into them and getting high. So when you're drinking, you're not the only one drinking, especially with alcoholics. There's a whole crowd getting high off of your drinking, and that's why they said one drink is not enough or too many. It's like they want more. So
Smoking, porno, all of it.
I just did an episode actually about how pornography has been encrypted with satanic spells. So when you're, engaging in porn, you're actually allowing these demonic entities to kind of open up and come through. That's the point.
Yes.
Janice Bartello did a whole episode on that with me. So yeah, it's just pervasive, isn't it? And so would you say then that you see these in like high definition on people, or would you say it's more of a kind of an ethereal wisp around this person that you might see with your eyes or with your
It's
third eye in the periphery, or how does it work?
it's when it's in the periphery, I can see them as clear as I see you.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's more of an etherical, wispy kind of look.
yeah,
Like if I'm close up to them and I'm looking for something, it's kind of like a fogging almost, and you can see a movement. Sometimes they have a little bit of color to them. Usually they're more of a gray, but yeah, no, it's hard. It's almost like a light energy almost too. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to explain it in human words. I don't know
yeah.
how. I mean, there are just some things you can't describe in human words,
No,
like
exactly.
like the colors that I've seen in heaven when the people have crossed over and I've been able to peek in. You can't describe those colors. There are no human words for it. So,
what was it like when you were working with people passing over in the critical care part? What do they call them? Places where people go to die. What was what
oh,
was, what was that like?
I loved doing that because I love old people. And I like being able to connect with my clients and build a rapport. But I mean, there were things walking around there all of the time in there. But most of it, the thing that I felt bad about is the way that the people were treated by the medical community. Everything was run and get a pill. They weren't trying to treat the problem. They were trying to negate the problem and make it quiet. They like you had mentioned, Jerry, they really don't have an accurate test to prove certain brain chemicals and functions. They don't have the ability to really prove what causes schizophrenia. They think they do, but they don't really have like a set pattern of tests. It's if you're hearing voices, you got schizophrenia. No,
Right.
you might be an empath and you might be hearing spirits talking to you, which doesn't necessarily make you, a weirdo. It just might make your frequencies running a little bit higher energetic frequency is. But the thing is that I had multiple things occur. I love sharing this story about Edna the blind lady. If you'd like me to share that one, Jerry's heard it a couple of times, but it's a great story.
Yeah,
Go
I'd love
ahead.
to. Yeah, please.
Okay. Edna was on my unit. She'd only been there for about 2 weeks, so I didn't know her that well. She had been blind for 10 years, totally blind, no shadows, no anything. She couldn't see speckles or anything. And she was in that active stage of decline where she was transitioning, where loved ones do start to come in. I want to say this to people, even if there's not a physical family member or person present in the room at the time that someone passes, I promise you that they never pass alone. So if anybody has guilt that their mom passed alone during the night in their sleep and they weren't there, they did not pass alone. And it's not the last time you're going to see them. We don't die. We shed our bodies, their meat suits, and we go on. You will see your pets and everybody again. I promise you that. So if you could kind of change your mind of seeing death as a sadness and maybe more of a celebration, because They get to go home and you're stuck here, but eventually you'll catch up with them. So anyway, Edna, her son and daughter come to the nurse's station and they say to me, Mom's talking to people in the room that aren't there. Well, I expected that because she was in that stage, and to comfort them more so than worrying about her, I said to them, I said, well, let me walk back with you to your mama's room and see if she's comfortable, if I can do anything to make her more comfortable. And we walked into the room. Edna was sitting at a slant, which they usually are to help them breathe. And she's reaching up into the air like she's being handed something very delicate, like a snowflake, or just something that she's being very, very careful with. And she's smiling. She's very happy with whatever it is that she's receiving. And I said to her, I said, Edna, who's here? And she says, George. Her daughter turned as white as a sheet and she had to sit down. And she said, well, George is my father. And my father passed away X amount of years ago. And the thing that was really cool is then Edna pipes up and she says, and he's glad that you're taking good care of Pixie. The son had to relay the story to me about how when George passed away, the son had to take possession of Pixie the poodle, Edna's dog, because Edna, being blind, could no longer care for the dog. He still had possession of the dog, which was now an elderly dog, but still very much alive. And he said to me, he said, do you think my mother is hallucinating? Well, I knew she wasn't hallucinating, but in a professional setting, I couldn't come out and say, no, I don't think your mom's hallucinating. I think your dad's here. And so I had to turn it around. And I said, well, do you think she's hallucinating? And he's like, well, I don't know. And I said, listen, I'm not trying to change your belief system, but it's been my experience that loved ones in the spirit realms do come forward to collect their loved ones and help them transition over so they don't have to basically walk home alone type thing. And I said, do you mind if I try something? And he said, okay. And I asked Edna, I said, Edna, can I ask George a question? And she nodded her head, yes. And I said, George, what color is your son's shirt? And Edna said, yellow. He was wearing a yellow Ralph Lauren polo shirt. The only way that she could have known, being totally blind, what color her son's shirt was is because George told her what color it was. Now, when they get in that transition period, the filters efface so they can hear the telepathic communication from the spirit realms and the other dimensions, the same as they can hear the physically embodied people's physical speech. So she can, people, if they could realize that during this time when they're all grieving and the person's, getting ready to transition and pass, that they can actually talk through that person to people that are on the other side. They can ask Uncle Bob what he did with the clock and actually get an answer through that person that's transitioning if Uncle Bob is present in the room at that time. If he's not, you can ask for somebody to go get him and they'll go get him, type thing, unless he's doing something. They are very busy on the other side. They have things to do. But I've been there with the beautiful receptions of the loved ones that come in. They have beautiful receptions for people. Of course, there are three kinds of death. There's a natural death, which we most all have. There are sudden deaths. There's also near-death experiences, and every single one is handled differently. But in the natural death, where they're prepared, they have this beautiful reception prepared for the loved ones to come through, and you get to have a reception with your pets too. So don't be surprised if you're expecting a German Shepherd that an albino elephant comes up to give you a hug, because it might have been something that you had in a previous life because your pets are there. So
What?
you might get the German Shepherd too.
Why would they just be waiting in the astral world or in that realm, whatever you want to call it, and not moving on to another life or going into heaven or whatever? Why are they just in that kind of halfway home, waiting for people that they've been living with, their family members, to die? Like,
What has been explained to me is that when they're out of body, that they can be in 6 places simultaneously. So only a portion of them is there waiting for the person, for the person's comfort, the person's passing's comfort, and to also greet them. But another part of them is off. What I've been told through I'm in communication with my mother on the other side too, is that some people, there are people that incarnate and people that reincarnate. The people that reincarnate end up, when they leave their body, going into a school type setting. They go and they do their life review, which is like a panoramic thing that they do. And God does not judge people. You're usually there with a familiar being or someone that will become familiar to you because you would remember from when you came here that you knew that person before, and you judge yourself. And really, if you think about it, that is more effective, because if you're having somebody point out your faults, it's easy to rationalize and say, well, yeah, I did poke his eye out, make him blind, but he spit at me first. Instead, you're placed in a position where you actually feel the trauma of what you did and the rippling effect that it caused in the person's life, so that you actually have to own your behavior, which is more effective. You judge yourself. From there, those people that have reincarnated go into more like a class type setting where they can work through some of the things that they made mistakes on, and then they are presented to come back here. The incarnates go through the same panoramic life review. They also get to spend some time in the Akashic or Akashic records, however you want to pronounce that. They talk about this hallway with cubbies, and the cubbies, some of the cubbies have like filters over them. And when my mom had asked once what those were, they said that was opportunities that you missed. So some of the cubbies are open and some of them are still covered. So then from there, they kind of go through a not decompression. What is the word I'm looking for? Like, for instance, when somebody's been in the army, they not declassify. They
Decompress.
Decompress. You know what I mean? They kind of why can't I think of that word?
Explain it and I'll try and come up with a word.
It's where they desensitize you to the trauma that you've been through here, if that makes sense. You know, like
looking,
yeah, you know, like for instance, if you've been a person that's worked for the CIA and you've seen all of these horrible things and you've just come back from Iraq, that you have to go through this desensitizing thing or debriefing, like a debriefing.
Okay.
That's close as I. Yeah, so they kind of go through like what we would consider a debriefing, and then from there, they can choose to stay in that plane of what we call heaven or the other side. They do actually have houses there, really, really cool walls that are kind of opalescent. The light actually emits from within the atmosphere itself, but the walls are more opalescent with no seams. They have kind of similar furniture, or you can choose to go somewhere else, and heaven turns into like an airport, and people are going down terminals to different galaxies and different universes, for that matter. They don't have to stay there. But the thing is they do everything by thought. So if they think of a place that they want to be, they instantaneously go there with that thought. My mother told me, I had asked her, I said, Mom, don't you ever miss the taste of brownies or the potato salad that you used to make, or the barbecued ribs that you would make and enjoyed eating? And she's like, well, we don't eat here. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know. She said, but we do everything with thought. So if we want to experience a flavor of something from anywhere in the universe, she said, all we have to do is think about it, and the flavor and the sensation of it comes to us as if we are eating it. And of course, I always like to say, wow, wouldn't that be great with Ben and Jerry's ice cream? You could eat as much as you want and not have the calories. So people also question, oh, well, once you cross over, you can't eat anymore. Yes, you can, but it's not a swallowing thing. It's just the pleasure part of enjoying the food, of the flavor type thing, because you don't need to swallow it, but everything is done by memory and thought.
Can I say, because I've spoken to people and they talk about the soul trap, and they say what happens is when you die, you're encouraged to go towards the white light. And it's actually a soul trap where your people that family members that have died, are kind of luring you in, but they're not actually really your family members. And you go through the white light, and then you get reincarnated back in, and it trick you into the life review. And you think, oh no, I've messed up my life. I need to go back. And it's just a way to kind of wipe your memory, do the memory wipe, and then put you back in. Is that something you've heard?
Yeah, that can happen also. I've heard of people that have had near-death experiences that have gone a little bit more of the lower levels than the higher levels, where actually it's almost like their family members that they want to engage with are like behind a glass window. and they can't speak to them or touch them or anything. And they're kind of going into the darker levels. And a lot of times, then of course, they come back out of that with the near death experience that they've talked about. But it can happen that way too. I'm talking about the ideal way, that most of the time that people have. But there are even periods of time that there are people like Hitler, for instance, that are cocooned for a while. They kind of just freeze them in place because they have to try to recondition them for that matter. And if they can't, then they'll just be absorbed. I mean, there's just some things that you can't change completely. Now, there are a lot of things that are very, very traumatic that people have done on this earth that they volunteered to do for other people's lessons. So, it's hard to understand it until you're there type thing because of the way, because then you can see everything and you can see all of the ways that it plays out. I mean, there's also this quantum, this other thing too, where when your soul starts to come down to earth, it splits kind of like a pool table with the balls in the triangle, and you've got the white ball. You take it off, and when you hit the white ball, the balls in the triangle scatter.
Yeah.
And that our life light is kind of like that it splatters and actually lends in all different universes and places. So there are paralleling lives, and those paralleling lives sometimes filter through one another. For instance, if you're having a dream that's realistic, man, I was a fighter pilot and I was flying and I was chasing these bad people. Well, it might very well be because that's what you're doing somewhere else. And that's why it seems so real. So there's a whole concept about that as well. There's a lot of deep stuff here that would take a while to explain. This is
Yeah.
just the tip of the
Tip of the
iceberg.
iceberg. It's incredible. It's fascinating.
And,
I
and,
mean,
with,
like,
and with
so
the,
how old are people then when they go up there? Like, is it the age that they die? They stay that age when they like, how do they look? How do they appear?
No, the median age is 35. However, when there is a person in physical form that's actively passing, or if your loved ones come back to visit you or to retrieve you at your time to pass, they come back looking as the way that you remember seeing them last. Not, however, in a healthy way. So, like if somebody has died of cancer and they've lost 200 pounds and they're 50 pounds when they pass and they look like a raisin, just shriveled, they're not going to present to you in that way. They will present to you in the way that you saw them last, healthy, but it'll be a way that you recognize. Sometimes babies that pass at that baby age will show up as more of a toddler, but you would still recognize the child because of their energy. You would connect with that and you would know, and plus their appearance, you would kind of remember them and, oh, look at you now
So what about
type
yourself
thing.
when you die? Like, and you're able to see yourself in a reflection when you die. Like, how old would we be?
Um, oh, that's funny that you asked that. I had a patient one time. She was, oh gosh, like 93 years old, and her husband had passed away in an automobile accident when he was like 30. And she said to me one time, she said, she said, do you think, she says, I've gotten so old. She said, and I'm looking forward to going home to seeing my husband. She'd been diagnosed with cancer and she knew that she had a short period of time. And she said, do you think that my appearance will repulse him? Will he even recognize me? What I've learned to understand is this, that they're with us along the whole way. Like we have a guardian that's with us constantly that volunteers to ride along for everything. They see the aging process, but the soul does not age. It stays the same. Even with people with Alzheimer's, that soul is perfect and intact. It's the meat suit that's not. So they're with you along the way, and the way that they see you is the way that the soul is, not so much the physical appearance in the spiritual realm, because you leave that meat suit behind. So does that make
Yeah.
sense?
So
Is that what
actually,
you?
when you go into that realm, you're just a soul, and then when you're looking at other souls, is it like a? It's not you're not looking at them. You're just feeling into their energy like you know them. It feels some familiar somehow.
Right, but yes, but you can also, I don't, that's probably a question that I should ask my mom
There's no
sometime for
etheric.
sure.
What I'm trying to say is there's no etheric meat suit in that realm where you can see their face and they look like from when they lived on Earth. It's just literally an energy, and you can feel the energy, and you know it's your mom, you know it's your dad, whatever. But it's just a feeling, is it?
but the energy is so precision. I can't think of the right word, that you can envision them as if you're looking at them, if that makes
Because
sense.
you
Does
said you
that
see
make
your, yeah,
sense?
because you said you see your cats and stuff like that, your pets, whatever. So they must
Mm-hmm.
look, you must see and look at a cat in that realm. They must look different to
Yes.
a, so they do have a shape, and they do have a shape, and they do look like a cat. And so,
They look like your cat. They
yeah,
look
exactly.
like
So
you
when
and
you're
your
looking
cat.
at like your dead family members, they must have a human visual to them, right?
Yes, they do. When my mother
Okay.
passed away, um, the whole side of the room filled up with that ectoplasmic portal, and an area opened towards the top of her head. And I saw my grandmother, my mother's mother, walk into the room, and she appeared as I remembered seeing her last. She even had on her leisure suit that she had made that she was buried in. She had on her a tight, she used to get this tight curly perm. She even presented him with her glasses, she doesn't need glasses on the other side, but she presented with her glasses. And when her spirit walked over to my mother's bed, she started to stroke the inside of my mother's arm. And I was just on the opposite side of her. And my mother was also sitting at a slant. And my grandmother leaned forward and said something in my mother's ear. Now, I knew that they were communicating because when people pass away, sometimes they choose to pass away. They're sometimes hours before, sometimes a day before, sometimes 30 minutes before, and then they let their body just physically finish. They're no longer in there. Or there are people like my mother that wanted to stay until the last minute. And I know this because even though she was no longer able to open her eyes or to verbalize words anymore, when people would come in physical body and say something to her in the room, like, "Hi, Phyllis," she would mouth and she would move her eyebrows up and down in response to what they were saying. So when my grandmother entered the room in her spiritual form and she started to say something in my mother's ear, my mother started doing that. And my grandmother pulled away, and then my grandmother came forward and said something else, and my mom starts doing it again, and then she pulls away, and then my mom stops, and this happened 3 times. So, and then from behind her, I could see this frantic wave, and I could smell my sister's perfume fill the room. I had a younger sister that was murdered by a jealous Baptist minister's son when she was 21. She had just turned 21, and I could see her, and she was wearing the beautiful puffy sleeve pink dress that she had been buried in, and she came around and actually embraced me. I could feel her, and when she went back around the room of people, the whole wall had effaced, and I was able to see all of the beings that were in there. And I'm skipping ahead. When my mother finally left her body, when my sister arrived and my grandmother arrived, I told my mom, I said, "Mom, Grandma and Robin are here, and it's time for you to go. It's okay. I'm going to be fine. We'll see each other again. I love you." I gave her a kiss. I hugged her the best I could while she was laying down there. She mouthed to me, and her eyebrows went up and down. And within 10 minutes, she took her last breath. But what I saw at the side of her bed is there were all of these people waiting to greet her. Some people I recognized from this lifetime, some aunts and uncles and cousins and people that had passed away,
Were they looking at you,
before.
Lynn? Were they noticing you, noticing them, or not?
Some of them were, yes. As a matter of fact, the odd thing was, is my ex-husband's, my in-laws were there, standing separate from the crowd. They wanted to let me know that they were there to support me and that they loved me, even though their son, was no longer a part of my life. But they knew that I could see them, and I'll tell you why in just a second. They When I looked at the head of my mother's bed, I noticed that there were a whole group of spirits that were standing at the foot of the bed, like in a football huddle, like American football huddle, not soccer, but they
Yeah.
huddle around. And when they opened up, my mother's spirit was standing in the center, like they were trying to stabilize her spiritual feet. And when I looked over, I noticed at that point my mother's physical body had stopped breathing. And I'm seeing all of these people that are coming up to her spirit and greeting her. And she's so happy. She's smiling. I mean, in that moment, I wanted to jump into the party too, because there was this beautiful, reception. And there are no words that can express the feeling of the love and elation that comes from that other. There are no words that can express it. There's not a feeling that can touch it. But you recognize it. It is familiar to you, and it's something that you've missed while being here. And so I remember thinking to myself, because I'm smiling, I'm watching her, how happy she is, and these people that are coming up and greeting her one by one. And I remember seeing that she has stopped breathing, and I think to myself, oh my God, if a nurse walks in right now, my mother's just died, and I'm sitting here smiling. That's not a normal response. They might think I did something to her. I mean, usually
like,
people are.
You're like Whoopi Goldberg in the movie Ghost, where she can see that no one else can. Yeah.
So, so I called the nurse in, and the nurse came in and pronounced that my mom was gone. And I'm like, can I stay? Because I'm still watching all of the events that are going on in the room with them meeting with my mom. The nurse walked right through them. They didn't even seem to notice that, that she was even, there. But she said yes. And I mean, it literally went on for 20 minutes, our time. And I say our time because we're linear, and time on the other side doesn't exist. It also doesn't exist in the Mace Energy program, which is something that is interesting, that they work with that part of energy and time as well. But so there is no time. But the thing that I thought was very, very interesting was the fact that there were other beings there that stood with the angels but didn't have wings. And they looked like they had come from somewhere else. And really, if you think about it from a scientific thing, energy can't be created or destroyed. And to think that we are the only humans in this entire universe of all of these planets, that we're the only thing that exists, would be ignorant. There have got to be, with all of the stars in the sky that are sunshines for other solar systems, there has to be other life somewhere. And when those lives finish, they have to go somewhere too. So these beings were beautiful, and they had white hair. They were luminous, and they were very, very tall. That these ceilings were like 10 feet, but their heads were being clipped like right here as they were walking together with the angels. As the people greeted my mother, the room started to thin out. And then my mother and my sister and my grandmother started walking past me out, along with these beings that were like walking along with them, helping them to go. And I thought that that was very interesting, that there were beings from other places that were there as well, that were equally as loving and engaging, equally at the level of what most people would call angels. They were also at that stage. You know what I'm saying? So I know it sounds crazy, but when
So
people talk about
what
if,
happened with the
if
split? So when, sorry, it was your mum dying? Who was it? Sorry, it was your mum. Did you
my
say?
mother,
So when
yeah,
your mum died, did you actually see us, like, her spirit, like in the movie Ghost, where Patrick Swayze comes out of his body? Like, is it literally like that? And you said something about the top of the head or something?
I have seen people come out of their bodies and they go like in a cyclone and go up.
Right.
Sometimes they just leave
They go
instantly,
up.
and
Mm.
yeah, they go up. I've seen people sit up and then kind of levitate out of their bodies. In my mother's case, I was so busy looking inside of heaven, for that matter. I was the colors. I mean, we would need 20 more color wheels to even be able to have the colors that they have there. And noticing that there was no light source, that the light seemed to emit from within the air itself. And the lighting was perfect. It was lighting, but it wasn't glarish. And I mean, every blade of grass and everything there is alive with energy, that when you look at it, you connect with it, and you can feel the life pulsing through it. So it's a loving engagement of everything, all with energy type thing. So when I was watching all of that, it wasn't until I noticed them huddling at the side of her bed. I'm like, why are they doing that? Why are they doing that huddle? That then when they opened up, she had already come out and she was standing in the center. So I didn't see her exit her body. I saw them collecting her after she had exited her body to kind of anchor her where she needed to be and get her stabilized. And that's when I looked over and noticed that she had stopped breathing. So I missed that moment of her coming physically out of the bottle and that body and them catching her. But I got to see them doing that, to stabilize her spirit,
Incredible.
get her spirit feet.
We'll have
Yeah.
to do another show about this because it's like I'd love to know what you saw in the heaven world when that opened up and all that kind of stuff,
Oh
you
my
know.
gosh. I've got, I could, like I said, yeah, couple of shows.
Yeah,
So
we got a
I
couple of more
just,
shows in you definitely. We'll have to at some point start wrapping up because you've been going on a while. I know, I mean I could go on all day, don't get me wrong, but I'm also trying to honor your time as well. I don't want to go over the mark here a little bit, but I mean,
well,
Lynn,
and I
thank you.
want,
Yeah,
and Jerry too. I want,
yeah.
I don't want, yeah, he's here thank you for so much for, having me too. I didn't mean to kind of take that over,
No,
but
no, it's been
anyway.
brilliant, hasn't it, Jerry? It's been incredible to hear these stories, and
Yeah,
it all
yeah.
fit. I mean, a few years ago, it have sounded really far out there, but now it's sort of almost what we're knowing now, and all the information that's coming in. It kind of connects all what we would consider paranormal from years ago into something that makes a lot
Mhm.
more sense.
People are waking up.
Yeah,
They are,
Waking
they
up.
yeah,
are.
I wish they just wake up to the fact that schizophrenia is caused by evil spirits and not some crazy biochemical imbalance that they have no proof for, or
They're
any
going to.
genetic kind of thing. I mean, that it's the only way that they're ever going to cure it is to realize the actual cause.
I'd love to actually as well, Lynn, talk to you a little bit more if we ever get a chance to another time. But
No,
also
that's
talk
fine.
talk
If
about
you
the
want to,
gifts, the gifts that these people have as well, like so what we would consider crazy or I wouldn't say schizophrenic, but there might be another psychotic disease, whatever you want to call it, however you label it. These are actually people that what we previously called shamans. Like they're interconnected into that multi-dimensional world, and they're
Well, that's kind
bringing
of
in
what they do in
information.
Africa. They get them and they turn them into shamans because they're already
Yeah.
aware of spirit,
Yes.
spirit, but
Yeah.
it's bad spirit. But if there's bad spirits, there's good spirits. You know, there
Mm.
it's a yeah. A lot of the trouble they have is they don't know what they're hearing. When it first starts, they don't know what it is, and it sounds just like their own thoughts. And I've had a number of prisoners ask, "Who are you? What are you?" And what the answer was, "We are you." So they want you to think that those thoughts are yours, because we all believe that whatever thoughts come into our head, that's who we are. I mean, those thoughts belong to us. That's way wrong. That's way wrong. And since the educational system here isn't very spiritual, that's what people believe. So they start hearing these schizophrenic voices, and they think that that's them, that their brain is broken. And then you got the psychiatric mafia telling them, "Yeah, your brain's broken. The only thing you can do is take these toxic meds and pay us a lot of money." And nobody gets cured. It does more damage in the long run.
that
Yeah.
is so
That's
true.
probably a good place to end up before you
Absolutely.
run out of.
Before we turn into a
Yeah,
pumpkin ourselves.
that's right.
So Jerry, would you mind to go first? Just say your website and any book you want to push or anything.
JerryMarzinsky.com. So it's like last name Marzinsky. If you want to find out how we got to the place where we discovered that these things were entities and not hallucinations, this is a story here. An amazing journey into the psychotic mind. Okay.
Lynn, can you just mention do you have a website or books or anything you like to push?
Yes, my website is www.lynnmonet.com. That's LYNNMONET, like the painter. These are my books. You can get them on Amazon. And I'm currently writing the book of Omnipresent Gnome, Place Like Home, which talks about how I was introduced to the elemental and fairy realms.
No, Lynn, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, you've
Uh,
gone through quite a lot, but there's so much amazing. You got to be pretty happy in a way for like what you've drawn out from all these experiences, and it's just incredible. Like you're very lucky in a way. I don't want to say lucky, but you know what I mean. You're just got blessed is a good word, maybe.
I am blessed, and I'm so fortunate to have gotten to come across Jerry, who has validated so much for me. And
Yeah,
I'm so grateful to him for that as well. And thank you
yeah.
so very much for allowing me to,
Yes.
the opportunity to be on your show. And I
Yes.
would love to come back.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Lovely. And yeah, of course, Jerry, I've got to give a big up to Jerry. Obviously, he's like a regular guest on my show now. Everyone loves him. And, we can keep talking about this subject over and over again because there's so much more layers of the onion. Every time we pull a layer off, there's another one there. And, it's such important work. It's probably, some would argue, it's the most important work you could be doing at the moment. So